Hi, my name is Julia. The following short film will take you through a day-by-day account of my trip to Buenos Aires this summer, 2017. Today we arrived in Areco after rising bright and early at 4:30 in the morning. The town was quiet, and the walk at dawn with the taste of dulce de leche in our mouths was a great way to observe the neighborhood until we finally discovered our hotel. The amount of stray dogs in this town is almost shocking. A pack followed us the entire way, and one dog specifically even came to our room and was so well-mannered as to lie by the door and wait outside politely. La Estancia de la Sina Sina was one of the most charming hotels I have ever stayed at. Though the buildings were old, everything was so well maintained, oozed with positive energy, and was saturated with the delicious smell of wood smoke. After exploring around the city yesterday, visiting a gaucho museum, and eating in a local restaurant that specialized in dry meat and cheese, we went to our first peña. A peña is a get-together that is centered around folk dance. For the first hour, music was played over speakers as people arrived, took their seats, and ordered snacking foods like choripan, empanadas, and postres, all of which were accompanied with beer and wine, which should be noted are sold for much cheaper than in the US. The following is a video demonstrating the folk dances performed at the peña. What really stood out to me when watching everyone sing and dance was that there was no dominant demographic. People young, old, short, tall, professional, or amateur were all dancing, and it was simply beautiful.
Se dio cuenta el comisario que a mis años colorado, la envidia me lo ha matado con carerita. Y por esos comentarios pensando triste que ven.
The music was infectious and the dancing contagious. One after another, couples began to rise from their seats and join the band. Areco was freezing, and I certainly did not anticipate coming from 90-degree weather and jumping straight back into winter. Given that I have never experienced life in the country, or anywhere rural for that matter, it was an incredible experience for me. In the US, a lot of farming or country life is commonly, and potentially stereotypically, associated with quote-unquote redneck culture, so I never really paid it much mind. However, my short time at Areco completely changed my perception. The people are warmer, the animals seem happier, the milk tastes better, and though the conditions were a tad harsh, the cold failed to dampen the beauty of our surroundings by one bit. Specifically, when I was on the horseback ride, I believe all of this was solidified. It became clear to me why people would want their children to grow up in a small town where everyone knows each other and has one another's back in a sense. A place where people appreciate the smaller things more, or at least are moving at a slow enough pace to be able to acknowledge and express gratitude for both the basics and the luxuries they have. While I need the busyness and high-paced manner of the city, I now have a completely different view of the country and could easily see myself spending time in the country a few times a year at some point and being completely content. Our visit to Teatro Colón was magical. As a performer and lover of all things art, I can only imagine what it would be like to perform in such a venue. The architecture was beyond belief, and the attention to detail was incredible. Our guide talked to us about the different architects involved in the building of the theater and how, to this day, people claim that it is the most beautiful theater in the world. And honestly, it's hard to disagree with that statement. One of my favorite parts of the theater was the sculpture called The Secret. The woman is Venus, holding arrows for her son Cupid as he whispers something in her ear. There is a myth that any couple who meets by this sculpture will fall in love, and I really enjoy hearing little romantic stories like that. Following our tour, we walked to see La Casa Rosada, the presidential palace of Buenos Aires, which lies directly behind La Plaza de Mayo. While I remembered learning about La Guerra Sucia in Argentina years ago in high school, I had completely forgotten that La Plaza de Mayo was in Buenos Aires. Starting in the early 1970s to 1983, roughly 30,000 men, women, and children suddenly disappeared. While many have their theories about what exactly happened, the dominant belief is that a state terrorist attack led military to hunt down and kill anyone and everyone who was or appeared to be left-wing, a socialist, a descendant of any political power, or a guerrilla. With furious and broken mothers with no answer as to where their children disappeared to, they began to gather at La Plaza de Mayo to march in defiance of the government's state terrorism. Today, I am so sick and am extremely sad I was able to do absolutely nothing. The other girls went to La Boca and reported back that they really enjoyed going, so I hope to be able to make time to go with them again so I can experience it for myself. I am super grateful that this hotel has a sauna because I was able to spend some time in there hoping that I can sweat this cold out. After hours of doing nothing, I decided to walk to get something to eat at Café Bengal next to the Bellini Hotel. I was very excited to see curry on the menu because I am craving spicy food like crazy. I find it really interesting that at most of the higher-end restaurants in Buenos Aires, they almost always serve you something before and after the main course you order, free of charge. For example, I was served a really tasty mozzarella appetizer, followed by my curry, and finished with a chocolate pastry and coffee. It seems like such a civilized thing to do and makes me wonder why it is not part of the US culture. My experience was the same in Cuba just a few months ago, in that every meal was served with a gorgeous complimentary salad, and I remember being so charmed by that. I fell asleep sitting up at the table, feel so sick as I write this, and am very disappointed about it all. Hoping I feel better tomorrow after resting all day because I am dying to dance. Today the girls and I all walked to a little food festival in which the theme was gluten-free. As a fellow glutard myself, I was very excited to hear this was on the itinerary. We waited in line for a simple burger and fries that tasted like true heaven given how hungry we all were. With food in hand, we walked towards the center of the park to sit and eat. And within minutes of us sitting, a street performer began to play American songs one after another. From Shakira to Bruno Mars, for a second it felt like home. It seems it is a common theme in Argentina that a lot of American music is played in restaurants, in clubs, in public, etc. Enjoying the sun, sounds, tastes, and smells of the moment, almost in unison we sunk into the grass and found ourselves staring up at the clouds. It felt nice to rest, be silent, and simply soak in our surroundings. Due to its simplicity, today was easily one of my favorite days. This evening, after walking around several ferias, we all went to the show Fuerza Bruta. Audiences were escorted into a dark, foggy, dim-lit room where we were left standing. Music played for about 10 minutes before the show started, and suddenly drummers emerged from the front of the room to play and chant. Throughout the show, stagehands moved the audience into completely different configurations, which allowed different stage pieces to be set up around the performance area. From flying girls in tutus to a man running on a treadmill with water spraying him down, the show was simply wild. At one point, a plexiglass floor emerged from the ceiling that held water and 5 girls. The girls slid and played as the stage shifted and eventually lowered to the point of where I was able to touch the hand of the performer through the glass. At the end of the show, water rained down from the center of the room as the music blasted to create a soaking wet mosh pit, which of course we all joined in. Leaving the show, I felt alive, inspired, and craving more, so we went to see live Brazilian music. At Botico do Brasil, a restaurant not far from Palermo, was incredible food, live music, the sound of Portuguese in the air, and delicious drinks full of fresh lime. As a samba dancer, I was thrilled to be able to jam with the musicians and chat with people from Brazil. The food was so delicious and was easily my favorite restaurant we went to the entire trip. This evening, we headed to Abasto to check out the mall, followed by an amazing drumming show. The venue was an old renovated warehouse, giving it a very cool vibe. The main open area was filled with ping pong tables, foosball, and other games to enjoy before the show. We played for a while, grabbed some refreshments, and after about an hour, headed in. I was a little unsure what to expect from a show that is purely percussion, however, I left feeling absolutely incredible. Everything that was performed was improvisation, which meant that watching the communication from conductor to musician and musician to musician was absolutely fascinating. No one song sounded the same, and they were impossible not to dance to. In the crowd, I met a guy from Argentina, a girl from Morocco, and another from Senegal. To see people from different walks of life, different cultures, different languages, all enjoying the same music and dancing was so beautiful and really made the night incredible. After the taxi ride home, the girls and I wandered down to get some ice cream and continued down Calle India to find a cozy cafe with sidewalk seating. We ordered pizza and pasta that were amazing. We stayed for hours just chatting and discussing our experiences as the trip was coming to an end. A morning tour of San Telmo introduced us to our new friend Mafalda, the stunning church of San Pedro Telmo, a market full of fresh fruits and vegetables, and a delicious lunch to follow it all. Mafalda is the spunky brainchild of Joaquin Salvador Lavado, better known by his nom de plume, Kino, that was the star of a 10-year-long comic strip that represented Argentina's social and political rises and falls. The character Mafalda was always very concerned with humanity and world peace, while Friends challenged values of money and gender roles. The comic strip ended up being so successful it was ultimately made into two animated cartoon series and a book with fans in Quebec, Asia, Europe, and Latin America. Today is my final day, and the feeling is bittersweet. This is the longest trip I have ever taken, and I rarely travel without friends or family, so the past 2 weeks were a very different experience compared to any of my prior travels. We enjoyed an early lunch as our last meal together that might have been one of my favorites from the trip. A simple grilled chicken thigh with a mountain of steamed vegetables was very refreshing compared to all of the empanadas, milanesa, and jamon y queso I have been eating the entire trip. This is the fourth day without my voice, and I am nervous to travel internationally without being able to communicate as effectively as usual. Today, I am feeling especially grateful for the fact that I have the ability to see, hear, and communicate in ways that are much easier than those with disabilities. Times in which we are sick always seem to remind me how I take for granted the quote unquote normal abilities I possess. Overall, I had a wonderful time in Argentina, and I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to take a trip like this, along with learning the things I did about the psychology of music. Thank you for watching, and I hope this provided some insight as to how my trip went.